What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they made some roster moves yesterday, which probably indicate a couple of things. We're going to dive into that. It was a news-filled day for the Pittsburgh Steelers, as one of their quarterbacks went third in the UFL draft. Reports came out that their offensive coordinator nearly ended up with another team, and then they watched the Denver Broncos make a move that probably strikes the end to one of their biggest names on offense. We'll dive into all that. Plus, as we do every single day, we will answer all of your questions. So please make sure that you're dropping them in the chat. Nick, it's a beautiful day here in the Berg. We already got a comment on reports about the Niners want Alex Highsmith and Dan Moore for Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know. We'll dive into that later. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. It's a major weekend in golf, and I'm a big golf guy. So does everybody that has been watching all summer long. So got the Open. I did not get up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or whenever the first guys teed off, but Tiger tees off here in a little bit. So when we're done here, I'll throw that on in the background. Continue to do my work because you are my boss. I'm not going to say I'm not going to work, but Tiger will be on in the background.
Nice. It's appreciated. Tiger will be on my television as well. I'm actually still working at the new house, so I have a little tiny television, like super old school, dude. Things got a back and everything.
As long as you don't have to wind it.
No winding. And I'm gonna let it rock, and I'm gonna do some work, and I'm also do some actual work because, well, training camp of the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're giving us plenty to talk about. Let's start with some news and notes. You got two pretty good ones today, I feel like, before we dive into the roster moves. What you got for us?
Let's start with the UFL draft because Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback John Rice Plumlee could be on his way to the UFL if things don't work out in the black and gold. The undrafted rookie was announced as the third overall selection of the 2024 UFL draft, going to the Arlington Renegades. You've had a lot to say about Plumlee so far, so what do you think about him going third overall to the Renegades and his decision that you wrote about yesterday that he's going to have to make?
Yeah, so first off, it's good to see him go to the Renegades. I felt like that was fitting for him to be drafted third overall from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Renegades. I think Plumlee's got a decision to make. I don't see him making the Pittsburgh Steelers roster, but I do see him making the practice squad and being that guy and being a guy that is a team player, could be utilized as maybe a punt returner during practice sessions as well. Just kind of get his foot in the door and make some noise for himself. And teams are going to like that. You got guys all over the place. Duck Hodges was a great one who make a little bit of a career out of themselves just because they're willing to do whatever and be here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think John Plumlee's got a shot to do that. That being said, I don't know what a contract in the UFL looks like. I would imagine it's pretty close to a practice squad deal. So you could either go be a practice squad guy or potentially a starting quarterback in the UFL and try to make a name for himself. He's got the fit for a UFL quarterback. This dude, you got to remember, this guy ran for 25 touchdowns in college. He had 19 of them in one season. That's wild numbers for a dude that athletic. He could still throw the football. He could do pretty much anything on a football field. I think the UFL fits him very well. That being said, obviously he's going to stick in Pittsburgh, but shout out John Plumlee. Wish him all the best. Excited to get his reaction next week when I get to talk to him, and hope he's enjoying the break now with a little added bonus with the UFL draft.
Always nice to have options, that's for sure. Let's move over and talk about something else that happened yesterday in a report coming from the Athletics podcast Scoop City. The New York Jets apparently made a run at Arthur Smith before he decided to join the Steelers, trying to bring him on to help Aaron Rodgers and company in year 2. This was the direct quote from Diana Rossini, who said Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith was one of those coaches that the Jets talked about possibly being part of the play calling process. So your thoughts on the Jets going after Arthur Smith and an extra layer added to the Sunday night matchup in Week 7 between the Jets and the Steelers?
I think it's hilarious. First off, Nathaniel Hackett's still there, and I just don't understand. Like, it's like telling your girlfriend, hey, like, I definitely called this other girl and was like, yo, like, I'm just testing the waters here, seeing how you're feeling. And then she turned me down, so I'm going to stick with you. No worries. That's exactly what that is. It's a really awkward. I don't understand how Nathaniel Hackett still has a job. But quite frankly, I like Arthur Smith, and I think Arthur Smith is a no-nonsense type of guy. That's the vibe that I'm getting from him. he would not fit with Aaron Rodgers and company in New York. That team is full of drama. It's just going to get worse throughout the season. Pittsburgh Steelers are a no-nonsense type of organization. He could fade into the background quite easily if the offense is good enough. So I think Pittsburgh's where he wants to be. It's a great choice for him. It's the best place to revamp your career if you're Arthur Smith, because the offense fits you so well and you have the pieces in place. I think Arthur Smith is a Brian Flores type move for the Steelers. It's not your typical Randy Fichtner, Keith Butler, Terrell Austin type move. This is a big name that we are giving a pedestal to so that we can push him into the role he wants to be, which is a head coach in the NFL. Give him another opportunity. I think Pittsburgh's the place to be. Would have laughed hysterically if he ended up in New York. And the Steelers, I mean, their second option probably would have been like a Gerard Johnson. That's a serious downgrade compared to where they were going, but might open the door for a guy who was the dude in Kubiak in San Francisco. Might open the door for him, but you never know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if that was an offensive coordinator position or if they would have put Arthur Smith below Nathaniel Hackett there, because they didn't say offensive coordinator. They did say in some situations. So maybe as a run game coordinator or something like that, but 100% a better place for Smith coming to Pittsburgh, because also you think of the two offenses, the build, the personnel. Pittsburgh definitely fits Arthur Smith more than the New York Jets currently do.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out to Arthur Smith for making a good decision there. Shout out to the Jets, man, for just always giving us something. Always giving us something. So shout out. All right, let's talk about some Pittsburgh Steelers roster moves and everything that they've done over the last 24 hours. They made news, I don't want to say late last night, but last evening, as everybody's calming down, getting ready for dinner, they announced that they have re-signed or signed again Tyler Matakevich, former 6th-round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers and then former Buffalo Bill for the last 4 seasons. He spent the first 4 years of his career in Pittsburgh, played a decent amount of games, 66 games, I believe, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, then went to Buffalo, spent 4 years there and played 63 games for the Buffalo Bills. A longtime special teamer, 31 years old, probably not going to do much on defense, but I believe that it indicates 2 things. And I have both of those things for you, but I also almost forgot that they released Jalen Elliott. So everybody who wants to say, Noah, stop talking about guys who are going to get cut, because I rambled about Jalen Elliott being that dude, that sleeper for a week and a half. I was wrong. So I'll admit I'm wrong. Let's talk about the inside linebackers. Matakevich signing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, indicates 2 things. One of 2 things. I believe it's both of 2 things. The first one is a Cole Holcomb update. This is the first solid evidence that we have that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not confident that Holcomb is going to be ready for training camp and likely isn't going to be ready for the season. If Holcomb was expected to be back by week 1 or maybe even just week 2, you rock with the guys that you have. You still have a dude in Tyler Murray on the bench. You still have Mark Robinson. You could make things work to fill 5 roster spots or even keep a roster spot open and go into the season with 4 like they did last season and welcome Holcomb back early in the year. The fact that they added Matakevich right before training camp probably means that Holcomb isn't going to be available at the start of the season, and they're not totally sure Holcomb's going to be around by the midway point of the season. It could mean that he's not going to be around at all in 2024. Now, that's worst case scenario. That's a tough time for Cole Holcomb. I wish him all the best, but the Steelers have to prepare for things like this, and it just kind of moves everybody forward. So it allows Matakevich to take away from Landon Roberts' special teams duties. Mark Robinson is still here, but we'll talk about him in a second, and moves Landon Roberts, Patrick Queen, and Peyton Wilson into those top 3 spots without having to stretch them thin, because the Steelers are clearly worried about injuries at the position. I believe this is a bad sign for Cole Holcomb and a sign that he's probably not going to be here, or a name to watch, or an update to get from until I want to say maybe the bye week, when we're hoping that he could come back. Cole Holcomb, in my head, is a guy that's not going to be around in 2024. Did you get the same vibe when Matakevich got signed?
It was the immediate thought was, oh, this is the only update we've gotten on Holcomb. And this was kind of under the radar. Everybody, they didn't have to say it. Everybody knew what it was. It was, this is them saying, well, we don't want Mark Robinson to be our 4 and Cole Holcomb's not going to be ready. So bring back Dirty Red, get a good special
Dirty
teamer,
Red.
and have him as that number 4 linebacker. So I had the same exact thought. I was like, man, that's tough news for Holcomb.
Yeah, it stinks. I hope him all the best. I hope he continues to work. I'm sure he'll still be at training camp and working and everything like that. I wouldn't say this marks the end of Cole Holcomb in Pittsburgh. It definitely adds a bit of mystery to what's going on and a lot of uncertainty to whether or not they're going to welcome him back in 2025 if he's not available in 2024. But he's still got 2 years left on his deal. If they believe that he's got enough juice left in the tank, it'll probably be his best opportunity in Pittsburgh because Landon Roberts is only here for 1 more year, and you could sign somebody or draft somebody, but chances are Holcomb's still young enough that you could rock as the number 3. And I don't think it marks the end, at least not yet. It could, and they could very well move on from him to hold a roster spot. But if they toss him on IR, it doesn't really matter. He's not taking up any space, and they don't need 90 guys. They're cool with 89. It's no big deal. When it comes to the second part of the Matakevich signing, if Holcomb does become available, if at any point this season or any point this summer, Holcomb is a spot and is welcome back and is healthy enough to go, I think it lowers the fate that the Pittsburgh Steelers have in a guy like Mark Robinson and could be a sign that the Steelers are looking and saying, well, if Holcomb is back, maybe Mark Robb needs some competition and we need a guy who's better. Because quite frankly, Mark Robinson hasn't shown that he's capable of playing defense, at least not consistently. And I like Mark Robinson. I think he's got potential and a lot of athleticism, and he's super raw at the position. At the same time, you got to at some point show that you could do a little bit more. Matakevich is not good on defense, but reliable. And he's a veteran who understands the defense and can play pass coverage and is athletic, and you could kind of utilize him there. He's a captain. He's a guy that's great on special teams, better than anybody Pittsburgh has besides Miles Killebrew. So I believe that they're just looking for it like that. Hey, we need another special teams ace. Mark Robinson's good. Matakevich is probably better. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. That's the case. Now, this is only apparent if Cole Holcomb comes back. If Cole Holcomb doesn't come back, this means absolutely nothing. But if we're wrong on the Holcomb sign, I think the second possible indication is that their faith in Mark Robinson is not super high. And if they're going to keep 5, Matakevich is going to make the roster over Mark Robinson. Big if, but if you guys are skeptical, if anybody's skeptical that this is a no for Holcomb, that's the second possibility here with Mark Robb. You think that aligns as well? Do you have different thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think that, it's a qualifier, right? The Holcomb situation. I think more so it probably leans towards Holcomb not being ready because this is a guy that going through OTAs, going through minicamp, all we heard was, well, we hope. I'm like, that's not promising, guys.
Yeah.
That's not making me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So
No.
This happening the week before training camp seems like it coincides with the Holcomb signing or the Holcomb injury news or injury update or non-update as we've gotten it. So I think that's most likely the case, but he is an upgrade. Matakevich, I should say, is an upgrade over Mark Robinson in my eyes. So it's kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone and kind of giving yourself a little bit of a backfilled roster spot.
Yeah, I agree. And to answer this question before we move on here, so they would put Holcomb on the PUP list to start training camp, yes, and then to start the season, I would imagine they put him on the short-term IR list and then go from there. But yeah, chances are he starts the season on IR, and he's definitely going to start training camp on the PUP list. But that was expected either way, I believe. I don't see him being ready by next week. Again, shout out Jalen Elliott. Thought he had a shot, but not going to happen. All right, before we dive into all these Brandon Aiyuk questions, because there are a lot, and I'm excited to talk about them because you guys are clearly fired up. Oh, let's answer this first. Joe Dilly. Shout out Joe Dilly. If the Pittsburgh Steelers need a linebacker, why not bring Quan Alexander back? I think Quan Alexander is an option later down the season. I don't know if Quan Alexander is ready to play football yet. We're getting updates with videos and stuff like that, but you have no idea if he's medically cleared and capable of going from the start of training camp. So if that's the case, we're just guessing and everybody else is just guessing. He's posted some videos of him running around and stuff, but Cole Holcomb's also running around. So you just don't know where they're at in their rehab. I think Quan Alexander would fit really, really well with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he would probably love to come back, and they'd probably love to have him. But you got to guess on where he is. That's more of a closer to the season. You're not feeling Matakevich or Mark Robinson. You might as well go sign Quan Alexander type move. Not right now, but he's got to be 100% healthy if that's what they're going to do. Okay. I want to talk about all this Brandon Aiyuk stuff, but first I want one more thing to talk about. It happened with the Denver Broncos the other day. I'll be short and brief with it, and then we'll dive into all the questions and the Brandon Aiyuk and the rumors with Alex Highsmith and Dan Moore Jr. and so on and so forth. The other day, the Denver Broncos signed their offensive guard, Quinn Miners, to a 4-year, $80 million deal. Why do the Pittsburgh Steelers care? Because, like the rest of the NFL, they watched the market for a left guard skyrocket, and, well, they're in the market for a left guard. What's it mean? It pretty plainly, straightforward means that the Pittsburgh Steelers' time with James Daniels is likely coming to an end after the 2024 season. I watched that happen, and my immediate thought was, there is no way the Pittsburgh Steelers are keeping James Daniels for $20 million a year when he's a year older than Miners, and they have two backups that they believe in Mason McCormick and Spencer Anderson. Now, do I agree with getting rid of James Daniels? No, I clearly don't agree with getting rid of James Daniels, but at the same time, I wouldn't agree with paying him $20 million a year either. You have options. You could go find another James Daniels because, quite frankly, James Daniels isn't a superstar. He's really good, but he's not a superstar. And you signed James Daniels for literally nothing 2 years ago. So why not try to get another James Daniels in 2024 if you don't feel good in Mason McCormick or Spencer Anderson? Now, that's a long ways away. A lot of things could happen. The market could go down. Who knows? But Quinn Miners and the Denver Broncos screwed the Pittsburgh Steelers and anybody else who's thinking about a lineman contract by saying, we're going to hand you $45 million guaranteed and raise the bar for everybody else. And the Steelers find themselves in a position that they're not going to be able to get out of. And James Daniels is unfortunately going to be the free agent once again while the Pittsburgh Steelers look for a left guard. You saw the signing. Were your thoughts different? Do you think the Steelers would pay $20 million a year for James Daniels?
No. I don't even have to go into why. They're just not going to pay $20 million for an offensive lineman, even though they're not going to be having to pay their offensive lineman for a little while now. You got Frazier as a rookie. You have hopefully Troy Fautanu starts as a rookie at some point this season. You have Broderick Jones in his second season. So you're saving a little bit of money, but at the same time, they have so many other positions that they need to pay for, and paying $20 million for a guard, even though it's a guard that has been probably your best offensive lineman the last 2 seasons, is just a little bit too much to bear.
That's what I'm saying. There's just you can't look at the situation and justify paying $20 million. Look at Omar Khan has done enough to set yourself up with an opportunity. Resign Nate Herbig. Worst case scenario, resign Nate Herbig for cheap, couple $1 million a year. Give him a shot to start at left guard alongside both of those guys. He understands the offense and he could play center as well. It just makes too much sense. I look at it and say it's just not going to happen. It's the end. James Daniels probably knows it's the end. The Pittsburgh Steelers clearly know it's the end. But at the same time, James Daniels is going to get paid a lot of money in free agency. So shout out James Daniels. I hope he goes and makes bank because, as we say all the time on this show, we're pro player, pro contract. Go get your bag, my friend. James Daniels is a good dude. He's always been a good dude. I think he got married like 2 years ago. So hope he's doing well. And go get that money, my friend. Go get that money. All right. We flew through that because I got to answer these questions, man. I am excited to answer these questions. What do we got? Well, let's dive into them. If you got another question, if you have any questions, please toss them in the chat as we do every single day. We will answer all of them. I will start to pay more attention here because my phone is blowing up. If you guys have an Apple, like, in the corner of your MacBook, how the texts just come up, I'm getting like 85, just boom, boom, boom from numbers I don't even know. So hopefully everything's good, but in the meantime, we're going to answer some Brandon Aiyuk questions.
Let's start with Alexander, who does ask a Brandon Aiyuk question. Says, thoughts on the reports the Niners want Highsmith and Dan Moore Jr. for Brandon Aiyuk?
So I just saw the reports this morning. It was from Kaboli. It's not a report. It's a speculation. Let's make that very clear that he says that they would want Brandon Aiyuk, or they would want Alex Highsmith and potentially Dan Moore on top of other things for a Brandon Aiyuk trade. I think Alex Highsmith makes a lot of sense. If you want to give up Dan Moore, go give up Dan Moore. Who cares? There's nothing emotionally attaching you to Dan Moore whatsoever if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Highsmith is a little bit more difficult. Highsmith's a very valuable piece to this defense. Your defense takes a significant step backwards if he's not a part of the roster. I don't want to say on the field because you have Nick Herbig, but now you're just going to go into the season with 2 outside linebackers and find yourself in the same position that you found yourself in 2 years ago, where it's just 2 guys and you hope everybody stays healthy when chances are that they're not. That just doesn't seem to work. That being said, Alex Highsmith being on the roster compared to Brandon Aiyuk being on the roster, Aiyuk brings a lot more upside than Highsmith does, raises the bar and the ceiling of what the Pittsburgh Steelers are much more than Highsmith does. So if you're going to compare apples to apples, that makes sense. I don't know if the Steelers would be open to that. It would have to lower the price tag of the rest of it pretty significantly. So you'd have to go from a first round, maybe a second round pick, to Highsmith and like a fourth. Highsmith and a third best I get. But if you're giving up Dan Moore and Alex Highsmith, I'd give up a fourth max at that point and be comfortable. Would you make that trade? Would you go Alex Highsmith, Dan Moore, and a 4th round pick for Brandon Aiyuk?
I mean, it keeps the top of your draft intact next year, which is a nice little bonus. And I will say you make a great point with the drop off from Brandon Aiyuk to I almost did it again. Jesus, Van Jefferson.
I know.
The drop off from there to there is much more drastic than the drop off from Highsmith to Herbig. But at the same time, Highsmith has proven to be a Pro Bowl caliber at times outside linebacker, and the Steelers are going to be relying heavily on their defense. Now, again, if you get Aiyuk, that raises the offense to still be potentially top 10 with him, and that defense without Highsmith is still likely in that top 10 range. So I don't know. It's not one that I would have thought of beforehand. It's not something I would have speculated beforehand. So shout out to Kaboli for that. It would certainly be a conversation. You know, it's hard to determine. I would say that at the end of the day, if you're going for a Super Bowl this year, that gets you closer to a Super Bowl. So if that's your all-time goal, then you do it. You do it. You don't love it, but you do it.
Yeah, you don't feel good. That's the thing, is you don't feel good about it. Like I'd feel better giving up a 1st round pick. I really truly would. I'd feel a lot better about the Pittsburgh Steelers future and right now if you just gave up a 1st round pick, because you have contingency plans. You have Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, who you could re-sign to a 1-year deal and make that work next season, or a 2-year deal or whatever. You could go into free agency and try to find a quarterback. You can make a move to try to trade up for a 1st round quarterback. It's tough to say you're going to find another Alex Highsmith. It's really tough to say that. That's not a guarantee. And you have Nick Herbig. I get that. But then you got to go find another Nick Herbig. That's not a guarantee either. That's a massive dip for the Steelers. Risk reward. Yeah, if this is whatever, you could fill it and you don't feel good about it. If Alex Highsmith was on the last year of his deal, I'd feel much better about the situation. But you're losing a piece of your defense for the future and right now for somebody that definitely very clearly raises your bar to Super Bowl level, but also hurts your entire plan of how you're going to move forward and currently work with things. I don't know. I'd rather go 1st round pick for Brandon Aiyuk than Alex Highsmith. And I know that's crazy, but I think it leaves you in a better spot to go try to compete this season and make up the ground next year than to give up guys.
Luke Nessie has a question here about Aiyuk, saying, do you guys think the locker room would be better with somebody like Sutton as compared to Brandon Aiyuk?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I think Sutton's a great guy, and I've heard really good things about him, but I've also heard really good things about Aiyuk as well. I've heard that he is a good teammate for the most part. He's got his issues right now. How does that compare to, you have a Brock Purdy in San Francisco compared to a Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, who's going to control the locker room a lot better? You have a Mike Tomlin compared to a Kyle Shanahan. You have an Arthur Smith compared to a Kubiak. It's a different situation. It's more grounded coaching and leadership, I believe. So, and I'm not like, there's George Kittle's in San Francisco, who's and Trent Williams, but there are names in Pittsburgh that I think help that as well. I'm not totally worried. I also think that a lot of that calms down once he gets paid. So I wouldn't be super concerned about his attitude. That being said, I mean, the answer is Sutton, but Aiyuk raises your bar a hell of a lot more.
Let's go to another Aiyuk question here from Vibin with the Dog, saying, would they be comfortable trading for Aiyuk when they don't have a plan at quarterback past this season? Do you think that gives them any hesitation?
I think it does give them some hesitation, but I also believe that they'd make that move happen. I don't think that they'd have any issues or pullback to say, oh, well, we don't have a quarterback in 2025. I agree with you, and I think they have that in the back of their heads. But I also believe that the risk reward is too high. You go get your wide receiver, you go win a Super Bowl this year. That's the plan. The Steelers are trying to win a Super Bowl in 2024. They'll focus on 2025 when they get there. That's how teams who win Super Bowls win Super Bowls. So I believe that they'd risk it and say we'd figure it out next year, whether it's Russ, Justin, or we have to figure out an alternative route. Even if it's in the second round, I think you can make that work.
Tyler Dotz has a question here saying, what do you think about trading for Jahan Dotson from Washington so Washington can use the pick then to trade for Brandon Aiyuk and them have to pay him?
I mean, if that worked out, that'd be awesome. Could you imagine if three-way trades happened in the NFL? That would be great. I don't think that's on the table. I also don't think that Washington wants to get rid of Dotson. He's too cheap. He's really good. He's got a ton of potential in front of him, and this is the first time he's got a quarterback. So I believe that they look at him and think that he's got a lot of upside. They'd like to have all three of them, I believe, for a guy like Jaden Daniels. Maybe a Terry McLaurin trade would make more sense because he's a massive cap hit, but Jahan Dotson I don't think is on their radar.
Let's go away from some Brandon Aiyuk questions as of right now. Let's go to Luke Nessie, who says, do you see the NFL YouTube channel disrespecting the Steelers yet again with a 9-8 record prediction?
Look, it's tough to say that the Steelers with a 9-8 record prediction is disrespectful because their record is their schedule is 9-8 worthy. It's 9-8 record material. So they got to overcome a lot of stuff. And if you don't have faith in the Steelers, which I don't think a lot of people who aren't watching the Steelers on a daily basis, who just surround themselves in Steelers news and Steelers moves, have that same faith, it's easy to come up with 9-8. I didn't see that. I don't know who did it. I think I went 10-7, so I'm not that far behind, but I think 9-8 is realistic when you just look at paper. When you know who Mike Tomlin and everybody is, I think you give them a game or two.
I'll just say I went 11-6, so everybody can like me a little bit more than Noah for the time being.
You did.
Let's go to Carl Spackler's question here, who says, do you think we could find a team to trade Cam and Najee for as a package? I feel like we could get a player and possibly move up a round or two in the draft next year or 2026.
As a package, I think you get a lot more, but I don't know what you're getting. Maybe both of them for a second round pick max, and that would be a great deal. Great deal. I don't know a team that needs a running back and a defensive tackle. That team's in a lot of trouble. It would depend. The Steelers aren't going to look to get rid of either of them. That's the end of the conversation there, is simply the Steelers want Najee Harris because the same reason they want a Brandon Aiyuk is they want to hunt for a Super Bowl, and they want Cam Hayward because Cam Hayward is a very, very valuable piece to this team, and they want to hunt for a Super Bowl. So I don't think they're thinking about trading either of them. I don't think it's even a consideration. But if you could, I mean, yeah, it would work. It would definitely work.
Peter Swistock has a question here, and he asked it yesterday. I caught it after we got off of the live, but he's really curious about Dino Tomlin. Do you think he eventually becomes a Pittsburgh Steeler?
I don't know. We looked this up once before. He's got 2 more years, I believe, left in college. I don't know if he's going to get drafted. I don't know what he's looking like. I know he hasn't done a ton. I don't think the Steelers would want him in Pittsburgh, to be honest. I don't think Mike Tomlin would want to be the guy that's got to eventually cut his son, if that's the case, or give him that tough love. I mean, it would be great. It'd be an awesome story. I don't look at the Steelers as the same as like the Lakers bringing in Bronny, or the Dallas Cowboys bringing in that running back last year or 2 years ago or whatever. I think Mike Tomlin's the opposite. And he's saying, yeah, look at Dino would be awesome. I'd love to give him an opportunity. Maybe we'll invite him to rookie minicamp, but I don't want to be the guy that cuts him. And he would have to be the guy that eventually cuts him.
Yeah, Dino Tomlin currently a senior at Boston College.
Yeah,
based on ESPN. So next year, 7th round pick, undrafted free agent. Maybe
I could see him getting an invite.
Maybe rookie minicamp.
Maybe rookie minicamp, but that would like anything past that. If you're not guaranteed to make the roster, man, could you imagine being like, "Hey, son, you're cut." Luck. Yeah, sorry, pal. Like that would stink.
Good luck in your future endeavors. See you at the dinner table.
Yeah. Dino is a good guy though. All the time, Mike Tomlin's kids are super nice, great people. So it would be cool to have him in Pittsburgh.
Dalton has a very important question for you here. Noah says, how are you liking NCAA 25? I'm using App State, and I'm on year 3. Recruiting is a little harder in this game, but still well worth the wait.
Yeah, so I'm holding off on Dynasty for right now. I'm going to try to set up a stream, hopefully this weekend, to stream to you guys to get some Dynasty going. I'm moving into the new house, so we're trying to switch offices and do everything, and I'm trying to find some time because I don't want to be streaming at like midnight. Although I've heard that's a great time to stream. So I love it. I've only been playing Road to Glory, ended up at Pitt. Pitt is garbage, and being a quarterback at Pitt is very difficult. But we're getting there. I think we're 3-2 right now. Just beat North Carolina, beat West Virginia, obviously, and then beat North Carolina. So we're doing all right. I'm going to get a dynasty going. I've heard that it's definitely tougher, but the gameplay is unreal. It is so realistic. It's worth it. It was worth going out and buying a PlayStation just for this game.
Vibing with the Dog says, which is more likely, the Steelers run it back with Russ and Justin, or they start over in the 2025 season?
I would say running it back with either Russ or Justin is more likely right now, but I would say it's like a 60-40 shot right now. Justin, I would say running it back with both of them boosts those odds more than just one of them. If I had to pick one, I'd go Justin, but I think that they feel pretty confident that they'll get something out of one of them and they could re-sign them for cheap. Money's going to play a major factor here, but I would imagine both of them or at least one of them aren't looking for a lot of money.
Jeffrey Kane says, what do you have to see from this team to consider it a good season? Excuse me.
At least a playoff win, maybe 2 playoff wins. Anything less than that, not a good season. That's the benchmark. Is Mike Tomlin it does not matter what happens during the season. Mike Tomlin has to end the narrative that he can't win a playoff game right now. That's the only thing that matters this season. You got to win at least 1, I think maybe 2. That would be a good season for me.
Yeah, 1 at least. And the second one, if you lose that second game, it has to be depending on how you lose. If you get shelled by the Kansas City Chiefs, a lot of people are going to be like, well, you were never close. But if you come close to whoever you play in the second round, maybe that changes the outcome there.
Depending on who it is. You lose to the Browns in the second round or the Ravens, that doesn't count, no matter how close it is. You lose to Kansas City in a close one or Miami in a close one, that counts. I agree with you.
Dalton wants to know, if the Steelers only choose 2 players to extend between Cam, Najee, Wilson, and Fields, who do you expect will be the 2 they end up keeping?
Justin Fields and Cam Hayward would be my 2. Najee's gone. I have 0 expectations of extending Najee Harris. I just don't think it's going to happen. Running backs are easy to find, and they're not incredibly easy to find, but they're easier than the price tag to pay one, and he's not a Saquon Barkley. I think Najee's a great player, but he's not worth a massive contract, and he's going to be looking for one. So I would say Cam, depending on if Cam's willing to wiggle, and Justin Fields would be my guess. Russ, I think, is going to price himself out of Pittsburgh. I also don't think that you're going to keep him unless you really believe he's going to win you a Super Bowl in the next 2 years.
Mason says, would you go Akello Witherspoon or Stephon Gilmore if you had to choose for an extra cornerback?
I mean, I'm going Stephon. 1-year rental deal, I'm going Stephon Gilmore. That's the easy answer there. But if we're going longer, if we're looking long term, you're signing somebody to do a 2-3 year deal. Akello Witherspoon is my dude. I think Akello Witherspoon's got so much potential in the NFL that he has yet to reach, and he's still young enough to reach it. Stephon Gilmore is a defensive player of the year, all pro. Like, this dude's a monster. So I'd go Stephon Gilmore. Akello Witherspoon, I think, is a good option too there. I'd go Akello Witherspoon over Patrick Peterson, if that makes sense.
We got a Darnell Washington question here. Question is, Darnell Washington, is he a bluff? LOL, he reminds me of a softie when I see him on the field. I'm hopeful.
Darnell Washington is not a softie. He
No.
is a scary, massive human being who will run you right over. It depends on what you're looking for. Don't expect a lot of receiving targets and look for him to be a dominant blocker. He's got to take a step forward. I think he does this season. He's still learning the NFL game. He was dealing with some knee stuff. I expect year 2 to be a better year for him. But I don't expect him to be a massive contributor in the receiving game. I just expect him to be a good tight end as a blocker, and that's a really good bar to have if you're Darnell Washington and the Steelers. So look for him to do that kind of stuff, open some lanes for some running backs. Don't expect him to catch, 60 balls this year.
Dalton wants to know, do you think Braden Fajoko makes the roster? I like his run defense.
I don't. I just don't think there's a spot for him. I think he makes the practice squad. I like Brandon Aiyuk. I think he's a super nice guy, and I do think he's got a lot of talent. I was surprised he didn't make the roster last season. This year, you have Isaiah Loudermilk, you have DeMarvin Leal, you have Dean Lowry, you have Montravius Adams. There's just too many names. The best way to make it would be over Montravius Adams if you're Fehoko. That's a possibility, a stronger possibility than almost any other name on that list, but I still don't think so.
Let's go over to Lifted Ones, who asks, is there a game that you guys are looking forward to next season? For me, it's the game against the Swifties. TM.
On Christmas Eve, I just hope I get to meet Taylor Swift. Like, I hope Taylor Swift on Christmas Day. Yeah, I hope Taylor Swift is spending Christmas Day like the rest of us at Acrisure Stadium, hopefully watching the Pittsburgh Steelers win, but we'll see when we get there. Game I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to the opener. I want Arthur Smith to get some revenge on the Atlanta Falcons because I don't think that was on him that he didn't work out in Atlanta. Denver is a massive one. Looking forward to Denver. That one I will certainly be at. Those are the big ones. And then the rivalry games. Having Aaron Rodgers in town on a Sunday night or Monday night is
Sunday night
going to be fun too. I just want to talk to him, but those would be the ones I'm looking forward to.
For me, it's always Dallas Cowboys games. Sunday night football in Pittsburgh. I'm looking forward to the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got another run of Brandon Aiyuk questions, by the way, so let's go through these now. Victor wants to know, do you think the price for Aiyuk has gone up since the NFL draft?
No, I honestly think it's gone down. I still think a first-round pick gets it done, and that's most likely, but I think you could probably wiggle your way into a second if you're the Steelers, just because things are going to hit the fan and continue to hit the fan, and I don't think it gets better for the 49ers. So I think it went down a little bit, not much, but I think it's got a possibility of going down.
Let's go to the next one. Brian Clark says, if the Steelers do indeed trade for Brandon Aiyuk, who has more yards in 2024, George Pickens or Brandon Aiyuk?
Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk has more yards in 2024. He's a 1,500-yard receiver in Pittsburgh this season, zero question. George is probably an 1,100, 1,200-yard receiver. But, you know, Aiyuk is just, he's the do-it-all guy, and they're going to lean on him. And George is going to have a major role here, but Ayuk's going to have more yards. I would go closer to 15 for Aiyuk and closer to like 12 for George.
Rossi Falsetto says, this question is for shits and giggles. Do you think Omar is waiting to see what's going on with their wide receivers versus the 49ers wide receivers? Who do you think he would pick?
He'd pick the 49ers wide receivers. I don't think it's a matter of the Steelers waiting to see what they have. They know that they have a gap. I am not questioning that. They know that there's issues there and they need to fill them. It's more so right now the doors are not open. There are no windows of opportunity, and he's not going to just make a trade just to make a trade. He's going to make the right trade for the right price for the right player. I think Aiyuk is the right price, the right player for the right team, and he's just waiting for that window of opportunity. That would be my guess.
Bill Jennings takes us away from the Brandon Aiyuk stuff and says, extend Cam or Pat Freiermuth if it comes down to it.
Oh, Pat Freiermuth, hands down, zero questions asked. Pat Freiermuth's got a whole career ahead of him. He's only going to get better. He's a starting tight end in the NFL. Like if he leaves Pittsburgh, he's a starting tight end in the NFL everywhere else he goes. So most other places he goes, but Kansas City's not signing him. San Francisco's not signing. Like he's a starting tight end. You extend Pat Freiermuth, he's still got so much growth in front of him. Cam is a dude that, he makes a massive impact, but if you're going to pick longevity over the next 2 years, you pick longevity. Muth is the guy.
Frankie says, yo, Noah, more yards this season, Pat Freiermuth or Deontay Johnson down in Carolina?
That's a really good question. I would go Deontay to make it safe, but I don't think it's by much. I think another good question is does Deontay crack 1,000 yards? I don't think he does. I think he stays just under 1,000 yards, but I also think Pat stays under 1,000 yards. I'd go Deontay by default, but that's a really good question. It's a really good question.
Yeah, I was curious as to what the leading receiver last year had for the Carolina Panthers, and that was Adam Thielen.
Yeah,
it was Thielen. He had just over 1,000. He had 1,014 yards, and you would have to assume that Deontay is going to be the number one target down there this year.
Yeah, but I still don't think he gets 1,000. I say it's like maybe 900, 9 something, but I don't think he breaks 1,000.
Hollywood 931 says, with all the 1-year deals left on a lot of our current contracts besides Daniels and Najee, who could you possibly see not being a Steeler after 2024?
Cam Hayward probably tops that list. Who else is on a 1-year? Nate Herbig, I would say on top of that. After 2024, Landon Roberts, I would put on that list as well. Dante Jackson, I'd put on that list as well. There's a lot of them. Larry Ogunjobi, I'd put on that list as well. That would probably be the big ones that top it for me, are all those guys. And then probably every wide receiver. I would say every wide receiver outside of Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, and George Pickens is also on that list.
F Mars 99 says, do you think the Pearsall injury plays into the Brandon Aiyuk trade for San Francisco?
I don't think it does. They have Juwan Jennings, they have Deebo Samuel. They didn't need Ricky Pearsall before. They don't need him now. I also think Pearsall is going to be back. Just starting on the PUP list is never massive news. It's always something small, or you're just not in football shape, or you tweaked the hamstring, something, but it's never crazy. Most times it's never crazy. I don't think it does. And I look at it and say San Francisco, the Brandon Aiyuk trade comes down to Brandon Aiyuk willing to play for the San Francisco 49ers this year or not. And I don't think he is right now.
Potato Salad says, I still like Renfro as a number 2. We could actually pay 2 other positions, saving $15 million a year versus Aiyuk. I know you're a Renfro guy too, but why do you think that we haven't heard anything about him in recent weeks?
I don't think I'm a Renfro guy over Aiyuk. I am a Renfro guy, but I don't think I'd label him a better option than Aiyuk. I would say that we haven't heard anything about him because the Steelers aren't interested in him. They have too many slot guys. I was surprised that they weren't interested in him. I heard so much interest last year for this guy, but they're not looking at him the same way. I don't know where he ends up this year. Maybe they sign him closer to the season. Things could change, but for right now, it's quiet, and they don't even have him on their radar from what I've heard. So I just don't think that they have interest in him.
Aaron Ball says, after all the updates yesterday, what are the Steelers' chances of getting Brandon Aiyuk? If you had to put a percentage on it now, which is a tough question, but where would you put him?
Yeah, I would. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again today. 70%. I'm saying 70% chance the Steelers get Brandon Aiyuk. That's that hard stamp, hard period at the end of that one. 70% chance. And I might be crazy until it happens.
We got a question here, more of a statement from Potato Salad. Says, trying to make my way to the dinner table. Got to hear the in-laws say potatoes salad. Love the content. Keep it up, guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Potato Salad is a phenomenal name. So that's just shout out. We appreciate you. Welcome to the chat. Hopefully they get Hunter Renfrow for you.
Let's go to Nice Takes, who says, Noah, first off, thanks for the great content as always. Do you think the Steelers traded Deontay a little too soon?
Yes and no. I like the Dante Jackson move. I don't mind the Dante Jackson starting corner thought, and the Steelers needed a starting corner. Seeing the market right now, maybe a little bit too soon, but at the same time, if you waited, you probably couldn't have traded him at this point in the offseason, and you wouldn't get the same return. And then would you still be in the hunt for Brandon Aiyuk? Because I think that you should be in the hunt for Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think the Steelers should be looking at this saying, hey, we have Deontay, that's good enough. No, go get Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk's a massive upgrade for this team. I think it makes a move. I think it opened the window. It put some pressure on them, but I trust Omar Khan to fill that pressure. I don't think it was too soon, and I like the move. Just to toss it out there, I liked the move.
Vibing with the Dog says, who do you think is the player that lines up next to Cordero Patterson during kickoffs this year?
Jaylen Warren, and that's going to be electric. It's going to be Jaylen Warren. That would be my guess.
Todd Hastings says, could the trade speculation with Brandon Aiyuk be smoke and mirrors and Pat Freiermuth ends up being the number 2 wide receiver?
I don't believe it's smoke and mirrors. From everything I've been told, it's very real. So I'm expecting it to remain real, that this is a real thing. Pat Freiermuth could be the number 2 wide receiver if they don't make a move, but I don't think it's smoke and mirrors. I don't have any indication that that's the case.
Potato Salad, making sure that we know that he is a veteran of the comment section here. Okay, put some respect on Potato Salad. Says, I'm not new. I was Garrett Maxwell, but had to spice it up a little bit. And then asks a question on top of it. Says, do we sweep the Ravens yet again?
Well, I appreciate you, Garrett. And just to toss that out there, Garrett Maxwell, just in case, Potato Salads, phenomenal names. Do they sweep the Ravens once again? I would say yes. I think it's the back half of the schedule. They're going to be in a tough spot. They're going to have to win those games. Yes, I would say yes. I would say the guess is yes.
Chris says, Would you be opposed to bringing back Chase Claypool?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 100% yes. Chase Claypool was not that good in Pittsburgh. Things have gone downhill. He doesn't have the work ethic. I like Chase Claypool as a person. I thought he was very nice, but I just don't think, I think his mind was more so like he's the type of guy, and I've run into this, like being a guy who, I mean, like we have a team and we have a great team over at All Steelers and All Steelers Talk and everybody who covers every sport, but it took a long time to get that great team. And before that, we had a lot of people who were in it for clout or for this or for that. They weren't in it for the work. Claypool kind of reminds me of one of those people, like just somebody who's in it for the TikToks and the fame, not necessarily to put in the work and win some Super Bowls.
Shakir Reddick says, why not go after Devontae Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders?
I would love that, but I don't think he wants to leave. I don't think the Raiders are open to trading him. I mean, it would make a ton of sense. The New York Jets would be all over that if it happened, but I just don't see it as a possibility, simply because I don't think Vegas is looking to get rid of him.
Yeah, I think towards the end of last season, you saw it on that receivers show. Towards the end of last season, you saw Devontae really start to enjoy his time playing under Antonio Pierce. And,
they need that right now. Exactly.
Lewis D says, could it be possible the Steelers are comfortable with Calvin Austin being the number 2 receiver? He's gotten high praises from both Azani and his teammates.
100%. I think Calvin's the front runner right now to be the wide receiver 2 this season. I will remain that way until Brandon Aiyuk is on the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But yeah, they love Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin's got a ton of potential, man. So much potential that is untouched heading into year 3, really to be. So I'm a massive fan of Calvin Austin, and I do think he's the front runner right now. Yes.
Chris Carruthers has another former Steeler, says, what about Juju Smith-Schuster returning to the Steelers?
I like the Juju thought way better than the Chase Claypool thought. If Juju becomes a free agent at any point, even if the Steelers have guys, I would sign Juju. Really cheap. You could get him for nothing. You don't have to have any expectations for him. Bring him to Pittsburgh. Get rid of the rest of them. I would rather have a Juju than a Quez Watkins or a Marquez Callaway. It doesn't mean that you have to replace a Roman Wilson. It just means that you have better vets. So if you could walk into the season, ideally, with George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Brandon Aiyuk, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, and Juju Smith-Schuster, or maybe even Van Jefferson over Scotty Miller, I'm all for that. I think that's a phenomenal move for the Steelers. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Let's close it out with this one from Lifted Ones, who says, who is your offensive X factor next season? For me, it's Jaylen Warren. Also, thank you guys for getting me through my morning shift.
Happy to help. Always happy to help. Thank you for getting us through our morning shift. When it comes to Jaylen Warren and the X factor, I think mine might be Jaylen Warren as well. Like, I really do think it might be Jaylen Warren. Pat Fryermuth's another one. The quarterbacks you could toss in there. If I had to pick one, though, I think I might agree with you. I think it might be Jaylen Warren. I think he might be an all-around gadget, crazy running back who explodes onto the scene. There's no denying who this guy is anymore. I think it's Jaylen Warren. I think I might agree with you. If I'm going to give a backup answer, Pat Fryermuth might be my answer. Sleeper, but it might be my answer.
See, you mentioned Calvin Austin earlier. To me, I think he's somebody that if he outperforms what he's going to do on paper, what you expect him to do on paper, he could be somebody that really elevates the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as where their offense could go. Let's finish it with a question on Calvin Austin, since that one just came in. What is Calvin Austin III's ceiling? Who would you compare his potential to as a current or past wide receiver?
Yeah, I would. His potential to Wes Welker. Wes Welker is a great, less physical, but just as scary. Has the speed, able to do a lot of things, could play on the outside for his size. If you take away the fact that, hopefully Calvin's not running into 30 concussions throughout his career, Calvin Austin would be, I like the Wes Welker comparison. I've made it a couple of times. His ceiling is a wide receiver too. Like, his ceiling is I could be the guy and start on the outside or the inside and make a lot of noise. I'm a big Calvin Austin fan. It's not Tree Archer. It's not Tree Archer. It's funny though. I would say Wes Welker is definitely the one. I do want to answer this one as well, because we did start the show talking about linebackers, and then we could head out after this one. Starting linebackers in the week 1 game, if I had to guess, are Landon Roberts and Patrick Queen, with Peyton Wilson coming in off the bench. But I would say all 3 of them are starters, and I don't think it takes away from any of them as we move forward. So those would be my starters come week 1.
That's a wrap for today then.
Cool. With that said, guys, we are going to head out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as we say every day, please go check out all of our work at All Steelers, or excuse me, at si.com/NFL/Steelers. I can't get my words out right now. We did some rebranding, so go check it out. si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.